On a December night in the Philippines, 4,000 people comprising of men, women, and children would lose their lives in a violent, fiery death that never should have happened. This is their story. There are disasters, and then there are the ones the world tries to forget. December 20th, 1987, an ordinary day in the Philippines. The sun hung lazily in the sky. The sea looked tranquil. But beneath the surface, a tragedy was building. A catastrophe so massive, it would claim more lives than the Titanic and RMS Lusitania combined. The Doña Paz was a passenger ferry owned by Sulpicio Lines. It was designed to carry just over 1,500 people, but on December 20th, it was loaded well beyond capacity. Officially, it carried around 1,500 passengers, but unofficial reports and survivor testimonies suggest there were over 4,000 people on board, many without tickets. Families, children, elderly travelers, all heading home for the holidays. There were so many people. Passengers claimed you couldn't even find space to lie down. People crammed into corridors, sleeping on deck chairs on the floor. No roll call, no safety briefing, no manifest for hundreds of those on board. At around 10:30 p.m., as the Doña Paz glided through the Tabla Strait, it approached the oil tanker MT Vector. The Vector was carrying 1 million liters of petroleum products, gasoline and kerosene, highly flammable cargo with no protective compartments to contain it. Worse still, the Vector was operating without a valid license. It was undermanned, unseaworthy. It had no proper lookout on deck. The Doña Paz, meanwhile, was running in near darkness. Survivors say the ship's lights were dim, and some said there was only one crew member visible on duty. The radio, non-functional. There was no distress signal. Then came the collision. At approximately 10:45 p.m., the Doña Paz slammed into the Vector. The impact tore open the tanker's side, releasing gasoline and kerosene into the sea. Sparks from the collision ignited the fuel. Within seconds, the sea itself was burning. A wall of fire surged toward the Doña Paz. Survivors describe it as hell on water. The flames licked the sides of the ferry, engulfing the deck in moments. People were incinerated in their sleep. Others, fleeing, ran headlong into flames. With no alarms, no lifeboats deployed, and no plan, chaos erupted. The heat was unbearable. Survivors dove into flaming waters, their skin blistering on contact. Many were dragged under by others trying desperately to survive. Some made it into the water, only to find it ablaze. Only 24 people survived, out of what could have been more than 4,000. Many clung to charred pieces of wood. Some floated for hours in darkness, surrounded by corpses. They watched their loved ones disappear beneath waves stained with oil and fire. Rescue didn't come until the morning. A few fishermen and passing vessels picked up the barely living. Survivors were burned, dehydrated, some in shock, unable to even speak. It was only then that authorities learned something unthinkable had happened. No distress call had ever gone out. Authorities didn't even know the ship had gone missing. It wasn't until more than 24 hours later that the public learned of the tragedy. And even then, the numbers were unclear. There was no DNA testing. Families were left with nothing but the empty space left by those lost. To this day, most of the victims found remain without names. Investigations followed. The The Philippine government found that both vessels were at fault. The Vector was deemed unseaworthy. The Doña Paz was found guilty of overcrowding, lack of safety measures, and gross negligence. Sulpicio Lines faced public outrage, but only a small amount of compensation was ever paid to the victims' families, roughly $4,000 per death. In the end, no one served jail time. The Doña Paz remains one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in human history. And yet, it's a tragedy the world barely remembers. There are no Hollywood movies about it, no best-selling books, just grainy news footage and the haunted memories of those who survived. The victims, forgotten by most. The lesson, a warning about what happens when greed, negligence, and silence are allowed to set sail. If you found this story interesting, then please like and subscribe.